Today, we're going to dig into a really powerful economic idea, one that could totally reframe how we see the world. It's got a simple premise, really. What if we stopped treating peace like some distant dream and started treating it like what it could be, a productive, investable, and ultimately, a way more profitable industry than conflict?
I want you to just take a second and look at this number, $20 trillion. What on earth could that possibly be? It's a figure so big it almost feels fake, you know?
But it's not fake at all. That is the bill the world pays every single year for violence and containing violence. It works out to a staggering 13.5% of the entire global GDP. Just gone. This isn't just a moral issue. It's a massive, quantifiable economic hole in our collective pocket.
So, that brings us right to the core question of this whole explainer. What if that $20 trillion isn't a sunk cost? What if it's just misplaced capital? What if we could come up with a much, much smarter investment strategy for all of us? So here's our roadmap. First, we're going to take a hard look at that $20 trillion problem. Then, we'll get to the solution, this idea of peace industries. We'll dive into a key issue they have to solve, something called digital slavery, and the knowledge banking engine designed to fix it. And then we'll see how all of that builds actual real-world peace infrastructure and ask the big question, is this a whole new way of doing things?
All right, let's start that audit. Honestly, if humanity were a company and you looked at our books, you'd be deeply worried. We are pouring a frankly insane amount of money into risk and containment. It's time to see just how skewed those numbers really are.
I mean, just look at this. It's almost hard to believe. The bar on the left, that's not the total military budget. Nope, that's just the increase in 1 year. And that increase, all by itself, is almost 85 times bigger than the entire UN peacekeeping budget. It tells you everything you need to know about our priorities, right?
And this just puts it in even sharper focus. We're okay with this ongoing $20 trillion a year drain from violence, but the one-time cost to connect every single person on this planet to the internet, a foundation for education, for opportunity, for everything, is just $1.6 trillion total. All of a sudden, that solution looks ridiculously affordable, doesn't it?
This table really lays it all out. That $20 trillion economic cost of violence just dwarfs everything. Direct military spending is over $1.7 trillion, and then you look at the entire UN system and its peacekeeping budget, they're just tiny fractions. The imbalance is just baked into the system. Okay, so we've seen the problem. It's big, it's expensive. Now let's pivot to the solution. This is where we introduce a really powerful new idea. What if we created an entirely new economic sector dedicated to peace?
So what is a peace industry? Well, by definition, it's any sector that actually makes more money the more peaceful the world gets. Think about that for a second. Unlike defense, which builds defensive assets, these industries build productive, income-generating assets. They don't profit from chaos, they profit from stability.
So what does this actually look like? Well, for starters, it's mostly civilian-led. Its main goal is to build the stuff we need to hit the UN Sustainable Development Goals. You know, clean water, healthcare, good education. The whole model is about preventing problems and working together, not reacting with aggression.
Okay, but for these new industries to really take off, they can't run on the same old fuel. They have to run on our knowledge, our collaboration. And that means we have to fix a huge problem at the ground level, how we value and pay for knowledge work in the digital world. Some people even call this problem digital slavery.
This quote really gets to the core of it. How do we stop this practice where people's digital work gets used for free? But, and this is key, how do we do that in a way that pays people fairly for creating things that help humanity, without creating these endless royalty systems that just get in the way of more progress?
I love this old poster. If you're unemployed, it's not because there isn't any work. There is a ton of important work to do, but our economic systems just aren't set up to recognize or reward it. The solution has to involve new ways of accounting for value, things like the slicing pie model for dynamic equity, that can actually track and reward these kinds of contributions. Because right now, the system is just not fair, and it's not sustainable.
So, the billion-dollar question, how do we fix it? Well, the proposed solution is a whole new kind of financial plumbing, a mechanism designed specifically to power this new peace economy.
It's called knowledge banking, and the concept is actually pretty simple. Just imagine your regular bank, but instead of tracking dollars and cents, it tracks your intellectual capital. Let's say you contribute a brilliant piece of code to an open source project or translate a critical document for a disaster relief effort. The Knowledge Bank logs that work to your account. It makes sure you get the credit and eventually the compensation for the value you created.
And this is where it gets really cool, because this creates a positive feedback loop, an economic flywheel. It starts with one person doing some knowledge work. The Knowledge Bank tracks it. Dynamic Equity makes sure they get paid fairly as the project grows. This creates real, equitable incomes, which means stable tax revenue. And that tax revenue can fund new kinds of government agencies like departments of peace that invest that money right back into building, well, real-world peace infrastructure. It connects one person's contribution to a global outcome.
So that's the engine that powers everything. Now let's look at what it actually builds. This is where all that economic theory turns into real, tangible stuff on the ground. This is the peace dividend in action.
Now, when we say peace infrastructure, we're not just talking about roads and buildings. It's much bigger than that. It's the whole ecosystem that keeps a society peaceful. Fair laws, political systems that actually work for people, just economic models, and an education system that teaches cooperation.
And that big idea translates into some amazing, concrete projects. We're talking about things like mass-producing sustainable housing, building clean water systems where there are none, creating open-source tools to help after disasters, and funding massive ecological restoration projects, these medicinal Earth outcomes. These are the actual building blocks of a stable, prosperous world.
This image, this is the goal, right? This is the payoff. It's a world where our technology, our economy, and our teamwork are all pointed in the same direction, building a world that's sustainable, fair, and peaceful. This is the world that's possible if we just shift our resources. Which brings us to our final section, and really the choice that's in front of all of us. Do we stick with the old, incredibly expensive way of just trying to contain conflict, or do we pivot to a new paradigm, one that focuses on proactively investing in peace?
And when it comes down to it, it's just about the math. Remember that $540 billion annual increase in military spending we saw? If we took just that increase, we could pay for the entire $1.6 trillion project to close the global digital divide in 3 years. This isn't a fantasy. It's just a choice about our priorities. The money is already there.
So I'll leave you with this final thought. We're always looking for the next big thing, right? The next big tech breakthrough like AI or quantum computing. But what if the greatest innovation of our time, the biggest opportunity we have, isn't a gadget? What if it's just redesigning our global balance sheet to finally reflect what actually creates real, lasting value for all of humanity?